Hashtag Section 1. A love that was supposed to last. The air inside my bridal suite felt heavy, almost suffocating. A bottle of untouched champagne sat in a silver bucket on the vanity, its condensation pooling at the base. My wedding gown, a vision of ivory lace and delicate pearls, hung from the wardrobe, shimmering under the dim glow of the bedside lamp. Everything was perfect, at least, it should have been. I stood before the mirror, fingers tracing the diamond ring wrapped around my finger. Jonathan had picked it himself, a flawless round-cut stone set in a band of platinum. Classic, elegant, everything he believed I deserved. And yet, staring at it now, my stomach twisted with unease. Tomorrow I would become Ava Hale. I should have been excited. I should have been dreaming about the life Jonathan and I would build together. Instead, a hollow ache settled in my chest, a whisper of doubt creeping through my veins. A soft knock at the door startled me. Ava, my best friend, Lila, peeked inside, concern etched across her face. She stepped in, closing the door behind her. You okay? You've been quiet all day. I forced a smile, hoping it didn't look as fake as it felt. Just nerves. Lila studied me, arms crossed. You sure? Because you don't look like a woman who's excited to get married tomorrow. I sighed, rubbing my temples. It's not that, I hesitated, searching for the right words. What if something's missing? She frowned. Missing? Ava, Jonathan is crazy about you. He worships the ground you walk on. What else do you need? That was the question, wasn't it? What else did I need? Jonathan was the kind of man most women dreamed of marrying. Devoted, kind, financially secure. Our relationship had been effortless, predictable in the best way. No unnecessary drama, no games. Then why did my heart race at the thought of someone else? I bit my lip, pushing away the forbidden thoughts clawing at the edges of my mind. You're right. It's just wedding jitters. Lila nodded, satisfied. Of course it is. Tomorrow's a big day. It's natural to freak out a little. If only it were that simple. After she left, I slipped out of my dress and pulled on a satin robe, the fabric cool against my skin. The hotel suite felt unbearably quiet. I needed air, a distraction, anything to clear my thoughts. Without thinking, I found myself heading to the bar downstairs. Hashtag. The lounge was dimly lit, the scent of whiskey and expensive cologne lingering in the air. A soft jazz tune played from hidden speakers, mingling with the low hum of conversation. I took a seat at the bar, ordering a glass of wine, hoping it would settle the unease gnawing at my inside. You shouldn't be drinking alone the night before your wedding. I stiffened. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. Damien. His voice was smooth, laced with amusement, but there was something else beneath it, something dangerous. Taking a slow breath, I turned, meeting his gaze. Damien Cole was Jonathan's best friend, his right-hand man, the one who had always been in the background of our relationship. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp blue eyes that seemed to see through everything, he exuded an effortless confidence that both irritated and intrigued me. I should have ignored him. I should have walked away. Instead, I held his gaze. And yet, here you are. A smirk played at the corner of his lips as he slid into the seat beside me. Couldn't sleep either. I sipped my wine, trying to steady my pulse. Why not? He tilted his glass, swirling the amber liquid inside before answering. Because tomorrow, I have to watch you marry a man who doesn't deserve you. My breath hitched. The words hung between us, heavy and unspoken for far too long. You shouldn't say things like that, I murmured, my fingers tightening around the stem of my glass. But it's the truth, Damien said, his gaze unwavering. Tell me, Ava, are you happy? I opened my mouth, ready to respond with the answer I had rehearsed countless times. Of course I was happy. I was marrying a man who loved me, who would give me the life I had always wanted. But the words wouldn't come. Damien leaned in slightly, his voice quieter now. That's what I thought. The heat in the room seemed to rise. Or maybe it was just the way he was looking at me, like he could see past the perfect image I had carefully constructed. I shook my head, trying to laugh it off. "You're drunk." "Not nearly enough." He took another sip of his whiskey, his eyes never leaving mine. Silence stretched between us, thick and electric. "Go back to your room, Ava," he finally said, though his voice was hoarse. "Before you do something you can't take back." I should have listened. I should have left. Instead, I stayed. I couldn't move. Damien's words echoed in my head, a dangerous invitation wrapped in warning. My fingers trembled around the stem of my glass, the wine inside untouched. My pulse roared in my ears, louder than the quiet jazz drifting through the lounge. "Say it," he murmured, watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Tell me you want me to walk away." I swallowed hard, but my lips refused to form the lie. I should have pushed him away, should have reminded him that tomorrow I was marrying Jonathan. Instead, I sat frozen, trapped in the gravity of him, the scent of his cologne, the heat of his presence. Damien exhaled sharply, running a hand through his dark hair. "Damn it, Ava." His voice was rough, filled with something raw and unspoken. He stood abruptly, tossing a few bills onto the counter, then turned toward me. "Come with me." I hesitated, every part of me screaming to resist. But my legs betrayed me. The moment I stood, he took my hand, his grip firm, sending a jolt of electricity through me. He didn't give me a chance to rethink my choice. He simply led me away. We stepped into the dimly lit corridor just outside the bar, the air thick with something unnameable. My heart pounded as we walked in silence, past the elevators, past the suites, until we reached his room. He pushed the door open, stepping aside, waiting. I should have turned back. Instead, I crossed the threshold. The door clicked shut behind me. My breath came in shallow bursts, my body tense as I turned to face him. Damien stood a few feet away, hands braced against the wall, his jaw tight. He was fighting this just as much as I was. "Ava." His voice was barely a whisper. I knew what he was asking. I knew this was the moment to stop. But I didn't want to. I closed the distance between us, my hand hesitantly brushing his forearm. The contact was electric, a spark that ignited something dangerous and unstoppable. Then he kissed me. It wasn't soft or gentle, it was urgent, desperate, a clash of lips and tangled breaths. My back hit the wall, his body pressing against mine, warmth flooding my veins. A small gasp escaped me, and that sound seemed to undo him completely. He kissed me harder, hands tracing down my sides, pulling me closer. My fingers curled into his shirt, anchoring myself, needing more. Somewhere in the back of my mind, Jonathan's face flickered. Guilt curled in my stomach, but it wasn't enough to stop me. Damien's hands found the tie of my robe, pausing. "Tell me to stop," he murmured against my lips. I couldn't. Instead, I pulled him back to me, sealing our fate. What happened next was inevitable. Our bodies moved together in a way that felt forbidden yet fated. Every touch burned, every whispered name sent shivers down my spine. I lost myself in him, in the heat, in the hunger that had been building for far too long. It was reckless. It was selfish. And it was the most alive I had ever felt. When it was over, the weight of what I had done came crashing down. I lay beside Damien, his arm draped lazily over my waist, his breathing steady. The air between us was thick, charged with something neither of us dared to name. I should have felt regret. I should have felt sick with shame. But all I felt was a deep, aching satisfaction. Damien shifted, pressing a lazy kiss to my shoulder. "You okay?" I hesitated before nodding. "Yeah." His fingers traced absent patterns against my skin. "Then why do you look like you're about to run?" "Because I had to. Because this was a mistake. Because tomorrow I was walking down the aisle to a man who had no idea that tonight, in this room, I had shattered everything." I pulled away, slipping out of bed, reaching for my robe. "I need to go." Damien sat up, his expression unreadable. He didn't try to stop me. He simply watched, those piercing blue eyes filled with something I couldn't quite decipher. As I reached the door, his voice stopped me. This wasn't just a mistake, Ava. I clenched my jaw, refusing to turn around. It has to be. Then I walked away, leaving behind the one thing I was never supposed to want. The hotel hallway felt suffocating as I walked away from Damien's room, every step heavy with the weight of what I had done. My robe clung to my skin, barely concealing the marks he had left on me, marks of a night I should regret but couldn't bring myself to. The air was cold against my flushed skin, yet I felt like I was burning from the inside out. Tomorrow I was supposed to marry Jonathan. Tonight I had betrayed him. By the time I reached my suite, my hands were shaking. I fumbled with the keycard, nearly dropping it before finally getting the door open. The second I stepped inside, the darkness swallowed me whole. I leaned against the door, pressing my forehead against the cool wood, trying to steady my breathing. What the hell had I done? I turned on a lamp, its dim glow casting long shadows across the room. My phone sat on the nightstand, buzzing softly. I hesitated before picking it up. Jonathan *_ can't wait to see you tomorrow, my love. Get some rest. Big day ahead _ My stomach twisted. Guilt wrapped itself around my throat like a noose, tightening with every breath. I should have felt disgusted with myself. I should have been crying, panicking, calling everything off. But instead, my body still hummed with the memory of Damien's touch. I dropped the phone onto the bed, rubbing my hands over my face. This couldn't happen again. Damien had been a moment of weakness. A mistake. That's all it was. I would marry Jonathan, and this night would become nothing more than a secret buried deep within me. I stripped off my robe, stepping into the bathroom. I turned on the shower, hoping the hot water would wash away my sins. As I stood under the stream, my fingers traced over the places Damien had kissed, touched, claimed. I squeezed my eyes shut. I had to forget him. By the time I crawled into bed, exhaustion weighed heavily on me, but sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in Damien's room, tangled in his sheets, lost in the heat of him. Morning came too soon. The sun poured through the windows, too bright, too cruel. My phone vibrated again, another message from Jonathan. Jonathan *_ can't wait to marry you today. I love you so much _ I forced myself to smile, even though my heart was pounding in my chest. I had to pull myself together. Hours later, I found myself in the bridal suite, standing in front of a full-length mirror. The dress was perfect, ivory lace, fitted to my body in a way that made me feel like a queen. My hair was curled, pinned elegantly. The makeup artist had done a flawless job hiding the exhaustion under my eyes, the lingering signs of a sleepless night. Everyone around me was buzzing with excitement, my bridesmaids, my mother, my friends. But I felt like I was underwater, my thoughts muffled, my body moving on autopilot. Are you nervous? My maid of honor, Lila, asked as she adjusted my veil. I forced a laugh. A little. If only she knew. A knock at the door made me turn. One of the wedding coordinators peeked in. There's someone asking to see the bride. I frowned. Who? She hesitated. He said his name is Damien. The air in my lungs disappeared. Lila's eyes widened. Who's Damien? I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. My entire body had turned to ice. Should I send him away? The coordinator asked. Yes. That's what I should have said. But instead, I whispered, I'll see him. Lila shot me a confused look, but I ignored her. My heart pounded as I stepped out of the bridal suite, my dress trailing behind me like a ghostly reminder of the commitment I was about to make. Damien stood at the end of the hall, dressed in a dark suit. He looked devastatingly handsome, and the moment his eyes met mine, I knew. He hadn't come to wish me well. He had come to ruin me. I walked toward him, every step feeling like a betrayal. When I reached him, I whispered, "What are you doing here?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, his gaze tracing every inch of me. Finally, he murmured, "You don't want to do this." I clenched my fists, nails biting into my palms. "You don't get to tell me what I want." His jaw tensed. "You don't love him, Ava." My breath caught. "You don't know anything about my love for Jonathan." Damien stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I know that when you were with me last night, you weren't thinking about him." My stomach dropped. I wanted to slap him. I wanted to deny it. But we both knew the truth. His fingers brushed against my wrist, sending shivers down my spine. "Run away with me," he said, voice raw, desperate. I sucked in a sharp breath. "Run away? With Damien?" Before I could answer, a voice called out behind me. "Ava!" I turned slowly. Jonathan stood a few feet away, confusion and concern flickering in his eyes. His gaze darted between me and Damien, and I could see the questions forming in his mind. Damien didn't move. I felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling. I had seconds to decide. Lie. Tell Jonathan Damien was just an old friend. Walk down the aisle and pretend last night never happened. Or tell the truth. And destroy everything. Jonathan's eyes locked onto mine, searching, pleading. I could see the love in them, the devotion, the trust he had placed in me. It made my stomach churn with guilt. Damien stood beside me, silent but unwavering, his presence a fire against my skin. I had seconds to decide. Jonathan stepped forward, his brows furrowing. "Ava, who is he?" His voice was steady, but I could hear the slight tremble beneath it. I opened my mouth, but the words caught in my throat. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might collapse. Damien exhaled sharply. "I'm the man she spent last night with." The world stopped. Jonathan's face paled, his expression frozen in disbelief. His lips parted slightly, as if he hadn't heard correctly. Then his gaze darted back to me, waiting for me to deny it. To tell him it was a lie. I couldn't. Jonathan let out a hollow laugh, shaking his head. "No. No. That's not possible." His voice cracked. "Ava, tell me he's lying." My throat burned, but no words came. His breathing grew uneven. "Ava." His voice was barely a whisper now. "Please." Tears welled in my eyes. My voice broke. Jonathan took a step back as if I had physically struck him. "Oh my God," he whispered. He ran a hand through his hair, his movements erratic, disbelieving. "You slept with him?" His voice rose, raw with pain. "The night before our wedding?" I tried to reach for him, but he recoiled. "Jonathan, don't," he snapped, his eyes now filled with something darker than heartbreak. "Don't you dare try to explain this away." He turned to Damien, fury twisting his features. "And you? Who the hell are you to show up here?" Damien stood firm, his face unreadable. "I'm the man she couldn't forget." Jonathan's hands curled into fists, but he didn't swing. Instead, he turned back to me. "I would have given you everything." His voice was laced with betrayal. "I loved you. I fought for you. And this is how you repay me." Tears streamed down my face. "It wasn't supposed to happen." He let out a bitter laugh. "But it did." Silence hung heavy between us, thick and suffocating. Jonathan took a shaky breath, his shoulders rising and falling. "I can't marry you." My heart shattered. "I can't even look at you," he continued, his voice barely holding together. "I trusted you, Ava." I reached for him again, desperate, but he stepped back once more. "Don't. Just don't." And then he turned and walked away. The moment he disappeared around the corner, my knees buckled. I clutched my chest, gasping, drowning in regret. Damien knelt beside me, his touch warm, steady. "Come with me," he whispered. I looked at him, my vision blurred by tears. "I just destroyed my life." "You destroyed a lie," he murmured, brushing a tear from my cheek. "You were never meant to be with him." My body shook with silent sobs. "And what if I wasn't meant to be with you either?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled me into his arms, holding me as I shattered. I had made my choice. And now I had to live with it,